Hey everybody, we're going to talk about Flowers for America by Dua Teo. I don't know how to say that. But anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. This is actually take two. I almost got done with the last one, and then all hell broke loose here because there was a squirrel outside and chaos ensued. So anyway, hopefully I can get through this one. We'll see. The author was, he lives in Wisconsin, but he was born in a refugee camp in Thailand. The tie that we have to him, no pun intended, the tie that we have to him is that he went to graduate school and got his master's in UNCG. So he's kind of a local boy, but he went back to Wisconsin. And if you look him up online, if you Google Flowers for America and his name, it will actually come up with his thesis, his master's thesis. And it's called Flowers for America, but it's a different story. It's not the same story that he submitted for this O. Henry thing. So I thought that was kind of odd that he would name it the same thing. And supposedly he's working on a book too, so we'll see how that goes. We're going to talk. I want to talk a little bit about the Hmong people. Probably most of you know who the Hmong people are. They were our allies in the Vietnam War. They, it's an ethnic group of people who live in Southeast Asia, Laos, which is where this story was mostly based, Thailand, Vietnam, and southern China. So once they were our allies, and they were recruited by the CIA to help in the Vietnam War, and once we pulled out of that war, we left the Hmong people behind, and something around 100,000 of them were killed. They were hunted down and killed. And some of them were able to escape to Thailand and then immigrate to America, which is kind of what this story happened. But a lot of them were killed, and a lot of them became refugees. They couldn't go back to their country of origin. So it's well, we won't get into that. It does say a little bit about how we do our allies, which is not good. But anyway, when you talk about the Hmong people, there are a lot of subcultures of the Hmong people, and I'm going to kill this dog. And they classify themselves by color, and it's not by color of their skin, it is color of their clothing and what that culture means in their clothing. For example, there's the white Hmong and there's the blue Hmong. Those are the two most populous groups. And then there's just about there's green Hmongs, and there's actually there's flower Hmongs too, and I did find a picture of some of them, and they're kind of, the flower Hmongs, if you see that picture there, are known for their colorful embroidery in their clothing. And then there's also the black Hmongs, and you can see they wear these little black hats there. So I hope I held that up right. So anyway, so there's a lot of subcultures. And also I looked up the, remember Mr. Cha in the story, and he was, he had this long blonde braid or ponytail or something down his back. She talked about it several times. And I thought, well, you know, why does he have that blonde hair? That seems so odd. But so I looked that up, and it was every odd year or so, some Hmong people or children are born with blonde hair. The blonde hair of Hmong children will generally fade into a light honey brown as they grow older. But some will remain blonde their entire lives. In this case, some will choose to dye their blonde hair black in order to conform to the norm. Now they're wrestling. Birdie, hush. So anyway, but this is a specific gene, and it has nothing to do with the Caucasian gene that causes blonde hair. Some people mistakenly think that that there's been mixed race, but it's not. It's a entirely different gene that causes the blonde hair in an occasional Hmong child. So I thought that was interesting. But when I first started this story, and it was difficult for me to read. Now, maybe you didn't have the same difficulty I did, but for me, it was the first two sentences did not contain a verb. I knew I was going to be in trouble. Just the broken English style of it, for me, that seems contrived. I don't know why you would do that. To prove a point, I guess. From what I've read, this author does not speak in broken English, so he chose to have his narrator use broken English. So that to me was frustrating and made it difficult to read. Plus, he starts the story at the end. And then you go through this whole saga, and then it wraps back to that beginning story. So after you've read the entire long novella, it was not a short story, you really need to go back and read the next 3 pages, because she starts with meeting up with her friend in the supposedly orchid market, and I was real happy it was going to be about flowers, but it wasn't about flowers. It was about sex trafficking. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to be as fun as I thought it was going to be. And then she goes back at the end of the story and talks to the same friend that she saw in the orchid market. There's a book called The Language of Flowers, and it's a novel. I read it in a book club several years ago, but it actually talks about the Victorian age of attaching different meanings to flowers. And it was a fun read, so if you ever get a chance, look that up. It's a lot more fun than Flowers for America. Anyway, like, for example, sunflower, you should never use a sunflower in a wedding because it means bad luck for the bride, that kind of things. Anyway, it was interesting. But what I did, because I wanted to know more about the orchid, there actually is a big orchid business in Laos. And so I wanted to look that up, and what I did was I Googled this, and I Googled the orchids of Asia. That sounds innocent enough, doesn't it? Well, it comes up that the Orchids of Asia Day Spa is where the Patriots owner Robert Kraft was accused of paying for 2 counts of soliciting prostitution. And he was charged. You can't make this stuff up. But anyway, the name of that day spa is Orchids of Asia Day Spa. It has now been shut down completely because it turns out it was a sex trafficking operation. Who knows? But anyway, getting back to, I shouldn't laugh about that, I guess. Getting back to the story. I just thought it was funny. Getting back to the story, it asked several questions for me, and you probably got something else entirely out of it. But for me, it was such a long story. It didn't really touch on religion much, except for the grandmother who evidently has a conversion. And she's not really a grandmother, but she lives in America, and she has a conversion and she is now reading the Bible, and so her family says that she's lost her mind. And that's really the only thing that touched on any kind of religion or faith. Most Hmong people they believe in animism, which means that there are spirits in everything. Like there might be a spirit for a rock, or there's spirit in the water, there's spirit in each animal, and there's, everything has a spirit to it. But some Hmong people are also Christian. My home church that I grew up in, a little Lutheran church in Hudson, North Carolina, actually sponsored a Hmong family to immigrate from, I guess they were from Laos. I don't know where they were from, actually. This was after I had already grown up and left the church. But that whole experience did not turn out well. And that's a long, convoluted story. And I'll tell you someday, if you ever ask me about it, what I know of it. But it was kind of a disastrous thing. It didn't work. But anyway, they meant well. So some of the things that this story triggered for me is, what does war do to people? And what does war do to even a culture? I didn't grow up in a war-torn country. I've never had war on my home turf other than 9/11. But that's still not the same thing as having a prolonged war where you lose your homeland, basically, that, there are no American refugees. So it's easy for us to say that's somebody else's problem, when really it's a human problem. And it's a Christian problem. If it's a human problem, it's a Christian problem. So that was one of the questions that kind of was raised for me. And also, this story says, what are you willing to do in order to survive? And in this story, in this particular case, are you willing to do even more if you have children? What are you willing to do to make sure that your children survive? And that's what this narrator, Maker, in the long run was willing to traffic herself in order to have the money to send her daughter to school. And it worked out pretty well for her daughter, evidently, because now she's married and has a baby, or is going to have a baby, and do you want it to be a boy or a girl, and that kind of thing. So, what are we willing to sacrifice? What sins are we willing to take in order to make our family safe? And so that I don't have an answer for that either. I'm not a mother either. So. But that's one of the things that this story, and one of the things that they talked about too was, she talked about luck and the role of luck. And Mr. Cha talked about this, just his luck. It was his luck that his wife died and he has to come up with a bride price for his 2 sons. And she talks about her luck. This is the luck that we were given. This is our fate, basically. And is there such thing as good luck and bad luck in the Christian faith? One of the things that we use when we're talking about being Christian, and we say someone is blessed. Now that's not what a blessing means, but we equate blessing with good luck. When someone is blessed, and we've talked about this before, we talk about the material meanings behind when someone is blessed. Birdie, come here. She's going to drive me nuts this afternoon. The wind's blowing, pretty strong. This is Monday afternoon. The wind's blowing pretty strong, and so squirrels are everywhere. Anyway, the meaning of blessing is actually God giving power to somebody to do that which they are designed or intended to do. It has nothing to do with luck. It's just something that we attach to luck. For example, if someone has bad luck, then they are not blessed, in our meaning. So we tend to equate those, but they're not necessarily equal. And I'm sorry, this dog is going to drive me crazy. I'm not going to do this one all over again. I've been talking for 15 minutes, and that's what happened last time, and she started doing this. So we're going to end it right here, so I can let her go out and look at squirrels, I guess. So anyway, I hope you have a blessed day. And by that, I mean that God gives you the power to do what He has intended for you to do. In my case, it is to take this dog outside to look at squirrels. Until we meet again, and we only have 2 more after this, and next time I'm gonna lock the dog outside, or make Craig take her somewhere. But anyway, I miss you guys, and I do hope you are blessed beyond measure. Talk to you soon.